I have a really big story this morning. Watch what I do and where I go because there's a lot of work to do today. These are the faces of Easter. I have to get up and move around. It's such a big story. Start there. Then we have this part. This was the beginning. This is the end. But this could be the end and this could be the beginning. Let's see what else we have. These are all faces of Easter. You remember the priest from the temple. You remember the water of baptism. The stones from the desert. The Good Shepherd. His teaching is healing, and healing is teaching. You remember the wine, the bread from just last week. The cross. I think we're ready. Are you ready? The child was born, a child who was a king who was a child. The angels sang, "Peace on earth." And when Jesus looked into the face of Mary for the first time, he saw the cross. And when he looked into the face of Joseph, his father, for the first time, he saw the cross. And they loved the baby and cared for the baby and held the baby close to their hearts, like all good parents do. And the baby grew and grew until he was about 12 years old. And then he was very much like all 12-year-old boys. And they traveled from Nazareth with his family to pay the taxes in Jerusalem. And it was a wonderful time of being together in the market, and the temple, and the places where you could eat and see all the people in the big city. It was kind of like going from Wimberley to San Antonio, or maybe even Dallas. And it was time to go, and they left the city, and you know how it goes. The dads all walk with the dads, talking about dad stuff. And Moms all walk with the moms talking about mom stuff, and the kids all run around doing kid things. So really no one paid attention until time to go to bed, and then it was time, and Mary and Joseph looked around and they couldn't find Jesus. Where is he? He's missing. They ran as fast as they could all the way back to the city. They looked everywhere. They looked in the market. They looked where they had rested. They looked where they had worshiped. They looked everywhere. Finally, they looked in the temple. And there he was, talking to the people in the temple. And Mary and Joseph asked Jesus the question all parents ask children, the question children really cannot answer. Why did you do this? And Jesus said, did you not know to look for me in my Father's home? And Mary and Joseph looked at their son and they wondered, who is he really? Jesus grew and grew into a man of about 30 years old. And he went to the river Jordan. He went to be baptized. His cousin John was there preparing the way. He went to John and he said, you will baptize me. And John said, how can I do that? For you are the Messiah. And Jesus said, but it is written that you will baptize me and lead the way. And John took Jesus and put him under the water of baptism, deep into the river. The water was dark. Maybe it was cold. When Jesus came out of the water, the light shone brighter than the light had ever shone. And there were people there who heard this. Here is my son, in whom I am well pleased. And there were people there who saw a dove come close to Jesus, and they said, the Spirit of the Lord is with him. Now Jesus knew who he was, but he was not sure what to do or how to do it. So he went into the desert, and he stayed in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. The desert is a dangerous place. The sand blows so hard that the people in the desert have to wear clothes from the top of their head down to the bottom of their feet to keep the sand from scratching their skin. There's very little food in the desert and very little water. The nights are cold and the days are hot. The people of God do not go into the desert unless there's a very good reason. Jesus needed to know, what am I to do and how am I to do it? While he was in the desert learning these things, a voice came to him and said, if you are the Messiah, the Son of God, you're hungry. Look at those rocks. Turn them into bread. Surely you can do that if you are the Messiah. And Jesus said, man does not live by bread alone. It takes more than bread for men to have a real life. But the voice wasn't done. It said to him next, suddenly Jesus felt himself to be at the top of the temple. And the voice said, if you are the Messiah, the Son of God, throw yourself from the temple. Surely God will catch you. Jesus said, God is God, and people do not need to test this. Finally, the voice of the great temptation came to him and said, "Look around you, all the world you can see. You could be king of all the world." And Jesus said, "I will be king. But that's not the kind of king that I will be." Because now Jesus knew what he must do. So he left the desert and he gathered the 12 around him. And he walked among the people. And everywhere he went, he did amazing things and said amazing things. And the people asked him many questions. "Who are you?" He taught, and as he taught, he healed. The people came close to him who were sick, who were diseased, who were troubled in their spirit. They wanted just to touch him, to have his shadow fall upon them. And Jesus found that he was not afraid of sick people. He was not afraid of the troubled hearts. He could be close to them in a way that was healing. One time he put his hands on the eyes of a blind man, and the blind man said, "I can see." And he began to see that there was more in the world to seeing. There was more than the world to being blind. Jesus' teaching was healing, and his healing was teaching. One last time, he and the 12 went to Jerusalem. On Monday, he went to the temple and he taught in the temple. The people came and listened. This was a new kind of teaching. The first will be last, the last will be first. It was very different. Not everyone likes what is different. On Tuesday, he came into the temple to teach again, and then the guards were there. They wanted to take him away. But there were too many people in the temple. They couldn't get to him. The same thing happened on Wednesday. He came and he taught, and the guards were there. They became frustrated. Why couldn't they get him? There were too many people around. On Thursday, no one saw him at the temple. Instead, he took the 12 and he went to have supper. Through the dark streets of Jerusalem, they went together. And when they were together, he said, "Take this bread, and each time you eat it, I will be with you. Take this wine, and each time you drink it, I will be with you." It was a confusing night. Jesus went to the garden to pray. He prayed for a long time. And when he got up from praying, the soldiers came. And with him was one of the 12, Judas, who came to him and said, "Master." And then the soldiers knew who he was and they took him away. It was a very confusing night. He went to the lesser courts and then to the great high courts with the high priests, those who could answer all the religious questions. And they asked Jesus these questions: "Do you say that you are God?" Jesus did not answer that question. They sent him on to the people of the Romans and Pontius Pilate. They sent him on to be tried, and Pontius Pilate said, what is this? What are you talking about? They say you are God," and Jesus could not answer that. Pontius Pilate sent Jesus and two thieves walking through the streets of Jerusalem up to the hill of Golgotha, the place of the skull. Jesus fell along the way, but he got there and he died. And it was so sorrowful. It felt like the whole world had broken. They took him down and put him in a cave and rolled a giant stone in front of the cave. Was to be his tomb. On Saturday, the people were quiet. They were sad. On Sunday, the women who were courageous went back to check to see Jesus in the tomb. They knew that Jesus was dead, but they were sad and they just wanted to see. And when they got there, the stone had been rolled away and Jesus was gone. And the great mystery of Easter had begun. That Jesus had died, and also that Jesus is with us. You can't really take away this part or this part. It's all together. Jesus died. And Jesus is with us. It's Friday of Holy Week. It is a time for quiet and waiting. But when you wake up on Sunday morning, your parents will say, "He is risen," and you will say, "He is risen indeed."